say that just as my brother Igal joins us on the show. How are you feeling sort of 24 hours later, Igal? We'll get onto the VAR, but about that Arsenal performance last night.
What happened to my internet?
I don't know.
We can still hear you, though.
His internet around Caribbean time.
Bruv, you're moving right now like the Arsenal forwards last night. You're frozen. There we go. He's back. He's back.
Sorry, my internet's acting up. Hey. Honestly, I was frustrated yesterday. And after having 30 shots, 5 big chances, not finishing our chances. Honestly, Terry, I can't even talk about refereeing decisions today because that is not what cost us yesterday. We cost ourselves. We have ourselves to blame. It's self-inflicted pain in that game. And it was 90 minutes of us just trying to find a breakthrough, and we couldn't do it simply because we were missing our chances in front of goal. We had sitters that players were missing. You had Gabriel Jesus, Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, multiple players you can hold accountable for missing their chances yesterday. And that's the whole front three. It's the story of the whole season, really and truly, when you look at it. At one point of the season, we weren't creating enough chances. And when we do create enough chances, we're just not finishing those chances. We've had the mentality to come back into games and to continue to fight. But for how long can we just be having these close games? What happened to Arsenal just showing up and blowing teams out? Like I feel like a lot of these games this season have been a lot more closer, a lot more tighter. And that West Ham game was just an example of what we've been seeing for majority of these games this.
Yeah, that internet is whack
this season. This season. It has. I don't know if Igal's gone, but I'll just quickly. Oh no, he's back. He's back.
No. Go ahead. I'm gonna change my seating so I can get my internet connection.
Listen, I echo what Igal's saying, man. I feel like this season, the fact that we, like I've said again and again, it's all about the line break. It's all about getting it to the players as quickly as possible. For me, yeah, you need to catch these defenses by surprise. Do you know what I mean? Get it to the attackers. Saka and Martinelli worked so well last season because we were able to get the ball to them as quickly as possible, and we're overlapping. Yeah, on the right side, Ben White was overlapping constantly, offering him the extra pass. Yeah, when then he can go inside and he can try and pass in the ball, and Saka can get a shot off. Same thing on the left side. Martinelli's always got Granit Xhaka going round and offering him the extra pass. So for me, it's either you get the players to do what they were doing last season and get, obviously Thomas Partey's coming back, so that hopefully that should bring us back a bit to what we were doing before, because I feel like Thomas Partey plays a massive part in the way that we attack, from getting the ball to Ødegaard so quick and then Ødegaard getting it to Saka so quick, or sometimes you see Thomas Partey even put a ball over the top. So listen, for me, I think it's the midfield change. The midfield change has completely scrambled everybody in that attack. Everybody, because it's just not how it was last season. Hence why we don't look so fluid. Defensively, we look spectacular, amazing. I'm happy with the defense. But now the attack, not only is it getting a striker, we need that left eight. We need somebody who can break the lines for us and get the ball to the attack as quick as possible.
I hear what you're saying, but for me at the same time, it's more simple than that. Saka isn't as good as he was last season, especially in the Premier League. Martinelli isn't as good as he was last season. Gabriel Jesus, of course, isn't as good. And that is the major issue for you. It's the ability to go and make sure you can score goals. Because when you go and look at the way you go and play, there was plenty of times you had the ball on the edge of the box and they were camped, that West Ham were camped inside the box. The difference is that usually when you're playing against a team, so if you go back to the Liverpool game, Liverpool are going to attack you. West Ham want to sit back. So you need to have something else in your locker to be able to go and break that down. Now, Saka had a chance when he went and hit the post. Apart from that, he had the tame shot that he cut inside and didn't really, test
and
the
keeper. Header directly
Saka had 9 shots, bro. Saka had 9 shots in the box. You can't tell me he didn't have chances.
I didn't say he didn't have chances. I said he wasn't clinical with his chances.
There were great chances though. Like the thing is, and I think JJ, you nailed it when you said Saka hasn't been as good. Like your starboard got to be who he was last year for Arsenal, because that's what the one header for me. Saka scores that every single time last year. And this time it was like right at Areola. And you just look at some of the times where he cuts in and the weak shots on his left, and you're kind of the only shot he had that had a lot of venom was the one when he should have passed it, in my opinion. Like I was like, I don't know who it was he missed, but there's two guys coming up the middle. I forget who it was. It could have been Trosser, it could have been Odegaard, two blonde guys, and he drilled it near post, and he should have crossed that ball, right? So it's kind of like it feels like he's forcing it in moments where he shouldn't be, and he's just not making the right decisions.
I want to ask a question about Saka because it came up. A few people have been speaking about it on the Rumble show we do, which, by the way, out tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. exclusively on Rumble. Go and check it out. It's called The Squad. But a question that came up on there was, is Saka, they mentioned Martinelli as well, but is he overrated? Is he as good as people were claiming he was last year? Is it because this year there has been a drop-off in terms of performance? He's cutting in a lot on his left-hand side. He's going on the outside left. Has he been kind of found out? Have people worked out how to stop him, JJ? Do you think there's an element of that, or is it just a player who is not in form?
I mean, depends what you mean by overrated. If people are saying he's the best right winger, some people are saying potentially in the world, and he's this and he's that based off one season, I think that's overrated. I think he's still very, very good. I think there was a couple times, Onana made a last-ditch tackle where they done a really nice little 1-2 on the edge of the box, and you can see, I was at that at the Liverpool-Arsenal game as well at Anfield, and you can see he's a problem. The problem is he's very one-dimensional, and he's being aided by the fact you've got an Odegaard and you've got really creative players. When you see Saka, it's like he's going to cut in on his left, but you can't really stop it. And I think, is he that killer? Do you know what I mean? Is he that killer like a Salah? Can he go and replicate what he did last season in terms of goals? He's proven that he can't, and it doesn't mean he's a bad player. I'm not saying that at all, but he's not as good as he was last season. And Arteta was probably banking on Martinelli and Saka having the same output that they had last season. Hence why he didn't necessarily go out and get a striker, or didn't see that to be a pressing need for one. Now you're looking at it and it's like, oh, have they returned to their mean, or is there a dip? Because I can look at Igal's face. Igal's probably going to tell you, nah, Saka's been really good this season. Look what he done in the Champions League, or he's going to give me some stats. But we know
just in the Premier League. Just in the Premier League.
Just
even the Champions League. I could bring you stats in the Premier League where he's done five goals and 7 assists.
Guys, I don't want to go try. I want to throw this to Igal inside. Something you said there, JJ, which I think needs to be discussed, is Saka too one-dimensional as a football player?
No, I just think it's a situation where the players are trying to get used to the slight system change. There's been a change to the system and a tweak to the system from last season, and it's forced. Because Saka had a moment where he was slumping. You see in Kai Havertz, it took him a while to get used to it. We still see Martinelli still trying to get used to it. I don't think that them yet, and the slight changes that they're being asked to do this season. And once they do, you'll see an upturn in form immediately. And when it comes to Bukayo Saka, guess what? It depends who you ask. If somebody's talking about him being better than Mo Salah, of course, that's overrating him, because I don't think he's ever been on that level yet. But if you were to say that he is one of the best in his position, I don't think that's overrating him. I think Bukayo Saka has been properly rated, and based on his performances for the last 2 years, he's been showing that. If you want to say he's not doing as well as he should be doing off the back of that game, fair enough. But I think the term overrated, it depends who you spoke to and what they said to you.
Gal, can I ask you a question on something you said there? Because you said something that kind of threw me, where you're like getting used to the system. Why would Arteta change a system that worked so well last year? Realistically, you should have won the league, in my opinion. And to me, what's their Arteta's been there for 6 years now or something. So what are they getting used to? Like,
the personnel is different. The personnel is different, meaning that you don't have the same level of skill sets in those positions.
Other than Xhaka, who did you really lose?
No, but that is a massive role change. Let's be honest.
I was the one who was being told Xhaka was.
When you have a player, no two players are the exact same, obviously, ever.
Obviously.
And when you see a Kai Havertz coming into that midfield rather than a person who gets a lot more of the ball and holds onto the ball a lot more during a game in Xhaka, and you change it to a Trossard or a Kai Havertz or even a Fabio Vieira at points in the season, you can see that there's been a slight change. That left 8 is not being asked to recycle the ball as much, not being asked to hold on to the ball as much. That's more the role of the left back to basically in Zinchenko to do that dogged work.
Well, that's fair. But what I'm trying to ask,
and that changes the whole dynamic of the midfield. And
but what I was going to say, how does that affect Saka? Because when we're looking at Saka, I hear what you're saying about the midfield, and you're saying that there's rotations and stuff. But ultimately, it's not as though you're having less possession in games. It's not as though you're not creating chances. You're doing all of that. But the personnel, in terms of Saka, isn't performing like he did last season. So when I look at it, I mean, as Cam said, a couple of those chances back, like maybe last season, they probably go in. That header that he had goes in. That chance in the opening minutes where he cuts inside and passes it into Areola, that probably goes into the back of the net. Now he's not doing that. I don't know what is different in terms of his role. Is he further away from goal? I don't know. Like what?
When I was referring to system, I was talking more about Odegaard and the likes of Martinelli. When we talk about Bukayo Saka, let's be honest, Bukayo Saka has probably been the most consistent performer out of everybody in that Arsenal team this season. So when you're talking about underperforming attack, who has been the person who's been producing week in, week out? Even when he's not necessarily played as well, Bukayo Saka has been the guy who's been producing. So to say other people around him are underperforming or Bukayo Saka's average, I think is a ridiculous statement. I think Bukayo Saka this season, Bukayo Saka has actually been putting a lot of chances on the plate for Martinelli and others not finishing their dinner. Martin Odegaard putting it on the plate for the likes of Eddie Nketiah and Leandro Trossard not finishing their dinner. So I think a lot of other players are letting us down, and it's not just the two guys that everyone keeps criticizing, and Saka and Odegaard are the ones that are our biggest chance creators, and they're getting criticized because the people are not finishing their dinner.
Do you think Martinelli and Saka's role then is the exact same as it was last season?
Martinelli's
role different? What's different? That's what I'm asking, because
Martinelli is as good as the person playing in the left 8 can and help make space for him and work with him. Martinelli, he benefited massively from Granit Xhaka and the system from last season, based on the fact that whenever Xhaka had the ball, he'd find him in space. Whenever Zinchenko had the ball, he would find him in space. And right now, when Martinelli is making these runs, either Xhaka or whoever's on the ball is not finding him, or whenever he is in an area, in those areas, you don't see the same level of assistance or overlaps. I remember last year we see Xhaka making those overlaps on a consistent basis. So I'm not here criticizing Martinelli. He needs to get better. But systematically, the changes that have been made, he is not doing the same things as last season, which is making him look a lot worse. And when he's missing his chances like he did against Liverpool, like he did yesterday, and like he did in other games, these are where people start to criticize him and say he's being exposed.
I think he's a victim of his own success in that now this season, opposition teams are doubling up on him, sometimes even tripling up on him. But then the question becomes, well, there needs to be a sort of an evolution in Saka's game, therefore. So it's just to take a very recent example, Bernardo Silva against Everton recently, when he got on the ball on the right side, and his intent was never to try to take on his man. His intent was to act as a magnet, drag two defenders. So he dragged McNeil and Mikalenko towards him. What did that do? That gave Phil Foden a hell of a lot of space to attack, and that's how we produced a goal. Grealish is amazing at doing that. He does that consistently, giving Rodri those long shot opportunities. So whether it's like an individual Saka thing or whether it's like an Arsenal evolutionary thing, there needs to be some sort of acceptance that you're not going to get as much joy and as much space because opposition teams respect you too much. They know how good Saka is. They know how good Martinelli is. But so there is that's an issue. But then there's got to be some problem solving there. Then it's got to be a case of, right, now how can we utilize that? Well, if Saka's getting doubled up on, trebled up on, someone else must be in space. That's the problem solving that Arteta's got to do. That's the problem solving that Saka and the players in and around him have got to do as well.
What you said there about evolution, I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think he's necessarily he's overrated if people are saying that he's the best right winger in the world. That would be overrating him. I remember back in the 2009-10 season, I remember there was a point in time, and people are going to laugh at this, but it's because you're too young to remember, where Luis Nani and Gareth Bale on performance were about the same level in the Premier League. They were getting some good goals, assisting, they'd go missing in certain games, but both looked as though they could go to that next level where they could become world class. Nani was still young, Bale was. And I remember they were going through peaks and troughs. And I remember listening to the pundits talk about it. I remember my dad talking to me about it. He goes, this is what always happens to young players. He said, they'll start doing well, and then the tacticians and the coaches work out how to stop them. Maybe it's doubling up, maybe it's showing them on the outside, maybe it's roughing them up a little bit, a combination of all of them. He says the top class players work out ways of still delivering. The players that are not so good they hit a ceiling and they never really improved from there. Gareth Bale went on to be one of the best players in the world. Lewis Nani never got any better. And that sometimes that can be hard work. Sometimes that can be perseverance. That's an attribute as well. But that's what I think Saka's going through right now, where people are working out ways, whether it's system-based or individually, to stop him. They're showing him on the inside. But as they show him on the inside, there's always somebody there to either stop the cross or block the shot. He's now got to work out what to do, whether that be it's the system helps him by, okay, well, I'm going to keep going on the outside and take players with me and pass to the inside, or he's got to find a different way of beating these players where he's running into more space. Because I do feel, and this isn't a dig because he's much better than him, but what I see him and Martinelli doing reminds me of what Anthony does, not going on the outside, cutting on the inside, and too regularly. Yes, there was 30 shots, but how many of them were shots they shouldn't have been taking and were getting blocked within a yard of it leaving their foot? And they're shooting it into, it's like that for me. I don't even count that as a shot. I know statistically it's one, but it's one of those shots where you're probably watching it as Arsenal fans going, don't shoot, because the likelihood of it beating that first man, second man, going through the big crowd and going in are so low. They need to get better at that, in my opinion. But I do think it's because they're young, and I wouldn't necessarily personally say that Saka and Arsenal are overrated. They're just going through some teething problems right now. Yeah. But I think a lot of it is the system. Zinchenko the same. He plays on the inverted element. So you've got Martinelli that cuts in on his right foot all the time, but Zinchenko's on the inside. There's nobody overlapping. That means there's loads of space on that outside. Arteta has got to adjust his system to put somebody in that position, to utilize that space to put the ball into the box. Then what you need is players bombing into the box. At times yesterday, you guys broke the line. You had 2 players in the box, and West Ham had 7 or 8. You're never going to score enough goals that way in these types of games. And I think some of it is the players adapting and changing their games. I think another element of it is Arteta having to do what Pep did when he changed his system last year. Klopp has changed his system. We saw Fergie do it multiple generations. He's got to go, right, this isn't quite working. He needs to find a way of making a slight adjustment. And normally it's not tactics, it's positional areas to exploit the teams, because the way you're playing right now is not the exact reason why, but this is why you're not going to win the league. You're going to be in the title race. You're going to come close, but it's not finishing these games off, not being good enough to score in. It only takes 3 or 4 games like this in the season. That will be the difference between winning the league and not. You're still one of the best teams in it, but we're talking about the elite end of the spectrum. And I do think buying someone like an Ivan Toney will help, but you still need to get that ball into the box.
I don't think they
win the league.